everybody. Welcome. Here we go. It's that time again. Matt Connarton Unleashed. So I try to adjust this. Here we go. Those of you watching online can see me adjusting the monitor here. Uh-oh. I'll have to fix that. Something just... Oh, I see it. Something just popped off. Anyway, sorry. Sorry for the technical kerfuffle right at the beginning of the show. And I forgot to mute my phone. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for everything. Oh boy, I usually everything goes off without a hitch here, nice and smooth. But I've been a little distracted, but it's actually been a good day. We'll get into all of that in a moment. But of course, welcome to the show here. It is Matt Connarton Unleashed, and we are live from the studios of WMNH 95.3 FM in glorious downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. Also on Comcast 97 if you're in Manchester. And hello to all of our online listeners across the nation and around the globe. And you can go to my website, mattconnerton.com, for all of your live streaming options, social media links, contact info, show archives, etc., etc. Today is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I do want to remind you, of course, that we are proudly sponsored by the Hop Knot on Elm. They've got those delicious gourmet pretzels that you've heard so much about and the craft beer. Don't go there today, however, because Monday and Tuesday is their weekend, but they are open Wednesday through Sunday, and it is an amazing place, and the food is great, the service is great, and a wonderful family that owns and operates it, and they're very active in the local community here. Thursday nights, they have Trivia Night hosted by the great Bill Cini. They have live music on Fridays. They've got another Gender Blender event coming up February 5th at 10 p.m. They've got a lot going on there, and it's going to be a very busy year at the Hop Knot as we proceed through 2022. So please continue to support them. Coming up, of course, today is Tuesday, which means coming up on the show in the second hour, we'll be joined by Mike Sudderth for his weekly Tweakonomics segment. This week, it's Tweakonomics Gone Global, apparently. Gone Global, that reminds me of a friend of ours who appears on the show. He used to, at one point, he called his show, We'll Let It Large Gone Global. Well, today it's Tweakonomics Gone Global. So those of you who've been listeners of Matt Connarton Unleashed for a very long time might know the reference. But anyway, we've been at this for a long time. It was about 10 and a half years ago that I started the show as a podcast, but coming up in April, it will be 5 years that I've been doing this program right here at WMNH 95.3. Coming up on 5 years. The time goes so very, very quickly. If you'd like to join us today, 603-250-6007 is the number, 603-250-6007. You can also text me at 617-917-4476. Tweet me at Matt Connarton or send an email to matt@mattconnerton.com. And of course, you can interact and opine in the Facebook Live chat, and we will say hello to everyone in there in a moment. But the best thing to do so that we may hear and enjoy your dulcet tones is to give us a call at 603-250-6007. And let's go ahead and say hello to everybody in the Facebook Live chat. I see Wayne Noel joins us from the great state of Michigan. Hello, Wayne. Mike Pelopita joins us, of course, from Queen City Cabinetry, another one of our fantastic sponsors here at WMNH 95.3 in the historic Sunbeam Mall. You can bring your kitchen to life with Queen City Cabinetry. Jenny is in the chat room, of course, and says, Shalom, peeps. Eric Gagnon, also known as Easy G, our retired entertainment reporter, says, are you ready for the return of Ronda Rousey? Yeehaw! Yes, that is the rumor that Ronda Rousey will be making her triumphant return to WWE at the Royal Rumble. Perhaps she'll win. Perhaps she'll win the whole thing. If they're going to use her at the Royal Rumble, of course, they're probably going to want to have her win it, and then she will go on to headline WrestleMania again. She's still a big draw. And Easy G says only 11 months to Santa. Oh boy, Christmas is coming again already. Just in 11 months. Isaiah Aline joins us in the chat and says, hey, everyone, love you all. Hope you all have a wonderful day. We hope you have a wonderful day, Isaiah. Isaiah, of course, you may be familiar. He's the Illuminati candidate in the 2024 presidential election, and I am being considered, and I am considering whether or not to accept Isaiah's invitation to become his running mate, his Veep, And I have to tell you, being vice president, it does appeal to me. I understand that the role is in some ways largely ceremonial. There was who was it who said, someone had said once that a long time ago in history, someone who said that the job of vice president isn't worth a bucket of spit or something. And someone else said they didn't want to be vice president because they didn't want to spend 4 years going to funerals. But I must tell you, I am intrigued by the idea being a heartbeat away from the presidency. It sounds like, by the way, I don't know if you've ever seen the show. If any of you have ever seen the show Veep, great show starring Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who, of course, played Elaine on Seinfeld. Jenny and I have been watching some old Seinfeld episodes on the Netflix. But Veep is a great show, very funny. Eric Street joins us in the Facebook Live chat. Hello, Eric. Eric says 9 or 10 months until the Christmas decorations come out again. Oh, boy. Well, let's just get through this winter, please. My goodness. My goodness. All right. Well, quick update on my dad. Now, I don't think we've talked about my dad much on the show as much as people who follow me on social media, on the Facebook, know the situation. But, my father, and he's probably listening, or he'll listen to this later and we'll hear all of this. But, and there was a time, by the way, out of respect for him, I wouldn't say too much about any of this because, he's a private person and whatnot. But I know that from talking to him, he also he understands and appreciates that because he's been a caller into this show, and because he finally came around and decided to get on Facebook and interact with a lot of my friends and listeners of the show and so forth, that people have gotten to know him, and he is well loved. And somebody. Dirk Don of Arrogant Media said, in one of his videos, he said, Martin Connarton is a saint. And I think it was Eric Pilcher, who does our classic film review here every Friday, who said that he said online that Martin Connarton is a national treasure. So Dad is loved. And I know he appreciates that and feels that. And he's back on the Facebook now that he's home from the hospital. So, but we had a little bit of a saga that finally resolved itself in an unexpected and surprising, actually, that was redundant of me. I apologize. Unexpected and surprising. Wow. Those are synonyms. I'm sorry. I really do strive never to be redundant or monotonous or repeat myself. There's a little joke in there. Anyway. I really try not to do that. I make an effort not to do that. I endeavor to avoid doing that. Anyway, so so what had happened was, my dad, he was at Shaw's in Dover, New Hampshire, and he wasn't feeling well, and he went out to the car and he called an ambulance, and they came and they brought him. It was a cardiac issue. So they brought him to Wentworth Douglas Hospital, and Wentworth Douglas had to send him to Mass General for heart surgery, and then Mass General, when they were ready to release him, they sent him back up here to New Hampshire. They sent him to Northeast. Is that what it's? Northeastern Rehabilitation Hospital in Portsmouth, for cardiac rehab, and then he got out today. But so. And from very early on, everyone I spoke to said that was very optimistic that he was going to be fine. When Wentworth Douglas initially called me, the nurse who called me said, he'll be fine. He's in good hands. The doctor, Dr. D'Alessandro at Mass General, who I spoke with, the surgeon who did the surgery on my dad, was very positive and whatnot the night that I talked to him after he had done the surgery and so forth. And my father, throughout all of this, we were talking today. I had to go and pick him up today, and he said that throughout all of this, he got great care. So he has no complaints about any of that. Great care all around from Wentworth Douglas, from Mass General, and the cardiac rehab in Portsmouth. He said phenomenal all around. Everybody was great, and he knew that he was in really good hands and would be on the mend, health-wise. But the thing that went wrong in all of this is, and it led to a lot of unnecessary stress and frustration and aggravation, which again did resolve today in a surprising way. But they lost my dad's car keys in the midst of all of this. His wallet and his cell phone were locked in the car, but his car keys, and he remembers seeing them being put into a bag for him when the ambulance came and got him. His car keys, his clothes, the new jacket that he had bought, his new boots, he had gone clothes shopping recently. All of that was lost. No one could find it. And this was particularly frustrating because of the car keys. It would be one thing if they only lost the clothes. That's annoying enough. But they lost his car keys. And this became a problem, a bit of a puzzle that we had to solve because he did not have another set. He did have another set at one time, but he, in a previous apartment that he had lived in, there was a fire in the building and the keys got lost in the fire. So he didn't have an extra set any longer in the, he's now in a new place. He's been in a new place for a bit, but anyway, so no car keys. They're lost. And this was very frustrating to him. And he complained to, I think they call it at Wentworth Douglas, they call it the patient experience team or something. And had several conversations with them, and they said, okay, we'll look again. And they checked with security, and they checked with Mass General, and they checked. No one can find the stuff. It's like it just vanished. And the problem that this caused was, so we couldn't get into the car. And I tried. So I talked to the management at Shaw's because the car was left in the Shaw's parking lot in Dover. So I talked to the management there. Now, I have several people I want to just give very public shout outs to who were wonderful throughout this whole thing. The management at Shaw's in Dover, New Hampshire. Joe, a gentleman named Joe, who was the first person I talked to, who was the assistant manager there. And then today I called there and talked to Peter, who is the store manager there. Great guys. They were just lovely throughout all of this, because a lot of places, if you're going to leave your car overnight for even one night and you tell somebody there, hey, got to leave my car here. They give you a hard time. Oh, you can't do that. And we're going to have you towed away if you do that. And these guys, I explained the situation to them, and they were amazing. They were very, very kind. And, but they did want the car removed, not because, they were very sympathetic, but the one thing that they were concerned about was it's a big plaza and they've got a landlord and there's other stores in the plaza. And they were just concerned that at some point, the management company that runs the property was going to say something about, hey, why is this car? Whose car is this? Is this one of your employees? That they were going to say something, and then they were going to do something like have the car removed or something. So that was their one concern. So they did tell me, please try to get the car out of here as soon as you can. We have no problem with it being here. We understand. We're sympathetic. We know it's not forever. We're just worried about, eventually the management company is going to come calling and say, what's going on with this car. So just for your own sake, try to get it out of here as soon as possible. But I kept having to tell them, okay, we got to wait a little bit longer. We got to wait a little bit longer. And they were wonderful. They were very, very patient with us. So that was great. So shout outs to the management at Shaw's in Dover. Lovely guys. I tried to get AAA to grab the car and tow it home. Tow it to my dad's residence so we could get it out of there. AAA wouldn't touch it because it was both a lockout, because we had no keys at all, couldn't get into the car, and without the key, you can put it into neutral. It's not automatic, it's a manual transmission, but the steering wheel is locked, so you can't unlock that without the key. AAA said, nope, can't help you. I tried twice, couldn't do it. I talked to Nissan, where he bought the car, Nissan in Somersworth. A gentleman named Mike, who works in the parts department there. Again, very, very nice. So shout outs to them. They were also great. But just because of the way things work, Mike said, we can make new keys for the car, but the car has to be here for us to program the keys. We don't have the capacity to send someone there or to, we don't have our own tow truck that we use or whatever. So you've got to get the car here and we can make new keys. Okay, great. But, I was able to eventually get in the car because I got AAA to let me into the car. And then I thought, well, maybe I can get Amica Insurance, my dad's insurance company, to tow the car because once I was able to get into the car, I looked at his policy. Okay, he has free towing. Great. I'll call Amica. They can tow it. The guy tried, couldn't tow it. He could not get the car safely on the lift because the front wheels were locked. They were turned and locked. The steering wheel was locked and, can't do it. So then we're in this terrible situation where it's like, okay, Nissan can make keys, but they need the car there. But we can't get the car there because I can't find anyone to tow the car. No one wants to tow the car, which I guess is good in one sense because if the property manager at the Shaw's Plaza wants to tow the car, I guess you can't tow the car. They'd find a way to do it because I'm sure if they say, oh, someone's leaving their car here, they'll just have a wrecker company come who doesn't care if they damage the car and would just tow it regardless of whether or not the front wheels are locked and just drag it or whatever, just not care, right? Because cars do get towed all the time. Here in the city of Manchester, if there's a snow emergency and you leave your car on the street during a snow emergency, they might come and grab your car. And they don't care that they don't have a key to your car, and they don't care if those wheels are locked. They're going to break into your car effectively, and they're going to tow it away. And if they damage it, they damage it. They don't care. They just say, hey, it's your fault. You shouldn't have left it on the street, right? But I can't get anybody to tow this car, to get it to Nissan, to get the keys made. So then, a couple people suggested, having a locksmith come, one of these mobile locksmiths who will come and do that for you, but they're expensive. And, we're not made of money around here. So we're trying to figure out a more economical way to do this. Nissan wasn't going to be very expensive, but to have a mobile locksmith come was. So then my friend Rich, shout outs to Rich Burke if he's listening, he and I used to play in a band together called First Shove. He put me in touch with, and this is another individual I want to give credit to. He put me in touch with this gentleman named Pat. Pat's Key and Lock Inc. This is a business in Salem, New Hampshire. They're not a sponsor. I don't get any money from them, but they are wonderful, and I'll tell you why. Because my father is a veteran, Pat was willing to take care of this for us at no charge. Because apparently Pat from Pat's Key and Lock does a lot with veterans, likes to help veterans, and my father's a veteran. He was a Navy SEAL during Vietnam. So Rich put me in touch with Pat. Pat, very nice guy, very sweet, tried to help us, but he was running into an issue. I gave him the VIN, the vehicle identification number from the car. And he thought he'd be able to use that to get the code, have a key cut, boom, done. And it wouldn't cost anything. I would just have to go and pick up the key. And then we can forget about Nissan and all that. Well, he encountered a problem. I guess there's a few different companies that he works with to get the code from. I don't know how it all works exactly. I've never had to replace keys, but I guess he had to get the code using the VIN number, and the first couple of companies that he tried, they couldn't give him a code for that VIN number for whatever reason. So he was working on, trying to find some way he could get the code for that VIN. It's like Nissan had it locked down or something, so only they could do it or something like that. I don't know. So he wasn't having any luck. And I was talking to him, and he was feeling badly about it. He's like, I really want to help you. Your dad's a veteran. I really want to help. So we're trying, but so far I can't get this key made. So then today, the big day, today, the day my dad is getting out of the hospital. So here's my father. He's gone through all this, the open heart surgery, and then they're working with him at the cardiac rehab. All of that's going great. Happy to report. And he looks great. When I went to pick him up, my dad he looks strong, healthy. He seems like his normal self. So that is all wonderful. But, he and I are talking about it on the phone the night before, like, this is so frustrating. Health-wise, things are going in a very positive direction, but this one thing is so stressful. What are we going to do about the car? We just keep hitting one brick wall after another with this. And it shouldn't be this hard to just get some new keys for this, right? So then we make a plan. We hear this morning, before I head down to get my dad, we hear from Mike at Nissan, who tells us he can actually make a key that, without the car being on site, he can actually make a key that will allow us to unlock the steering column so that the wheels aren't locked anymore. That way, at least if we can do that, we can get a tow truck to then take the car to Nissan. But we've got to get those wheels unlocked to do it. So it was possible just using the VIN, not to make a coded key, but to make a key that will at least let us unlock the wheels, have the car towed to Nissan, and then Nissan could make the new keys. Okay, so that was the plan. That's what we were going to do. I was going to pick up my dad. We were going to go to Nissan, get that key, go to Shaw's, unlock the steering column, call the tow truck company, this tow truck company that Nissan recommended, have them come, tow the car over to Nissan, have Nissan make the new keys. And God only knows how long this was all going to take. And I may have ended up not being able to do a live show today. You might be hearing a best of right now, right? This was going to be, it sounded like it was going to be quite but at least we had a plan, right? At least we had a plan. So here's the twist. Come on, baby, let's do the twist. Sorry, I can't use the word twist or even hear someone else using it without thinking of that song. It's how my brain is wired. So it's about that time to bring forth the rhythm and the rhyme. Again, that's how my brain works. It's about that time I go to pick up my father. Now, I had to bring him some things because, again, not only did they lose his car keys, they lost his clothes. So I had to bring him some things. So I show up there with a couple of bags. I had to bring him some shoes. He didn't have shoes. He didn't, So I bring him the stuff. And they let me in, even though their policy is no visitors because of COVID. I guess if you're actually picking someone up and you need to bring them something that they're going to need to leave, that, they make an exception there. So there's some discretion with the rules. Otherwise, they don't allow visitors. So I couldn't go visit him while he was there, but they did let me in and up to his room to pick him up. So I go up there, I see him, and by the way, I am so relieved when I walk into that room and see my father, because honestly, I didn't know. I was kind of girding myself a little bit for, and I didn't say any of this to him, and I hope he doesn't mind hearing this. But I was actually kind of worried that, okay, haven't seen my dad in a while, with COVID and whatnot, and I don't want to accidentally. I mean, we're both vaccinated, but I don't want to accidentally get him sick. That would be terrible if I'm carrying something and don't know it. But also, I'm thinking, okay, 74 now. He just had major heart surgery. Am I going to walk into that room and he's kind of just not the strong guy that I'm used to him being? Is this that moment, which I assume most of us have to face that moment where, you know, we are going to interact with one of our parents, and you kind of realize for the first time, damn, they really are getting older. They really are, you know, they're not as strong, they're not as vibrant maybe as they used to be. They're getting older, as we all do. If we're lucky, we get older, right? If you live long enough. And I was kind of, I know it sounds a little maudlin, but I was thinking about that. And I was like, he just had this is a pretty big deal, a triple bypass and all this. You know, I got to be prepared for my dad just might not be who I'm quite used to him being, which is not only understandable, but to be expected at a certain point in life, right? And not his fault, of course. You know, so this is all my own hang up, but this is what's going on in my mind. You know, I was excited that he was getting out of the hospital completely now, and that everything looked good health-wise. But I was a little bit worried. And I was worried too that all the stress of the car thing might have somehow negatively affected his recovery. But I'll tell you what, happy to say, I walked into that room and I looked at him, and I immediately felt better because he looked great. You know, he's sitting there. He had just finished eating. He's, you know, the nurse is bringing him paperwork he's got to look at and fill out. And he looked like my dad. You know, he looked strong and he looked healthy and, you know, a little pale, but it's winter and the Connartons are pale. You know, we're Irish. So, no, but he looked really good. He looked really good. And, God, that was a relief. You know, like I said, I was girding myself for, you know, is he going to be, he's been through a lot and he's older, you know, but nope, he's still, he's still my dad, you know. He looked great. He was moving around well. And, God, that made me happy. That made me just relieved. But here's the best part of the whole thing. So for 3 weeks now, we've been dealing with this saga of the lost keys, and it's the one thing he's really annoyed by and frustrated with because, like I said, as far as the care that he got all the way around, fantastic. He's very, very happy with all of that. But he's in disbelief that they could be so careless as to lose his things. And security at Wentworth Douglas initially wasn't particularly helpful, and they didn't really seem that interested. And you know, the woman he talked to at patient experience or whatever they call it at Wentworth Douglas was nice and kind and empathetic, but didn't have any solutions. Like, you know, I'm sorry, Martin, no one can find your stuff. So here's what happens. So I'm standing there in the room with him at cardiac rehab to pick him up, waiting for, you know, them to finish processing his discharge and whatnot. I'm getting a call on my cell phone. I look at my phone. It says Wentworth Douglas on it. I'm like, oh, this is weird. Why is Wentworth Douglas calling me right now? And so I answer it. And it's, I forget her name, but it's the woman from patient experience or patient relations, whatever. And I'm thinking, oh, she's calling me to follow up because she had talked to my dad earlier, or my dad talked to her. It might be a better way of putting it because he was obviously frustrated. And she's following up with me now saying, you know, I hope your dad's not too upset or something like that, right? No. You know what she said to me? She said, I have great news. We found your dad's things. So there you go. Somehow, they finally found my dad's things, including his car keys. Thank God. We were ecstatic. I mean, would have been nice if that had happened a lot sooner, could have saved us a lot of unnecessary stress and aggravation and anguish and frustration and, I mean, Jesus. But thank God they got to us before we had gone to Nissan and went through all of that. We had this whole big plan, And then, nope, there I am in the room waiting for them to discharge my dad. And they call and say, yep, yeah, we found his things. We've got his car keys. Just swing by Wentworth Douglas when you leave there if you'd like, and go to the front desk, and security will give all of that to you. And so that's what we did. We got out of there. We went to Wentworth Douglas, got his things, went to Shaw's, picked up his car, followed him home to make sure he could get into his apartment okay, no problem there. And that was it. You know, we hung out and talked for a little bit, and thank God. My dad's home. He's doing well. He looks great. He seems healthy. He's probably going to retire now. But yeah, so there you go. At the last minute, I mean, like I said, our next destination was Nissan. At the last minute, they came through and they found his damn car keys. And we went and got his car out, and I called Shaw's, and I thanked those guys. And Peter, the manager there, was like, I'm so glad that everything's okay with your dad. And I called Pat at Pat's key shop in Salem, and Dad called Mike at Nissan, and there you go. The whole saga. But there's a reason I've told you this entire story. This is a cautionary tale. If you have a heart attack, don't let your keys out of your sight. That's it. That's the lesson. Now, of course, you can't, when you're having a heart attack, you're not thinking about where your things are, but don't trust that somebody else is going to worry about it for you, because apparently they're not necessarily going to. But anyway, so that's the story. That's the story of my dad and the keys. I hope you all found that riveting. I'm going to be looking into making a documentary about the experience. But but Dad, if you hear this, I love you, and I'm so glad you're okay. And there you go. And I'm glad you still look like and act like my dad. Because someday we all, we're gonna, again, this is if we're lucky. Isn't it interesting that life is like that if you think about it? If you're lucky, you get old and eventually fall apart. That's what happens if you're lucky. That's the best case scenario for your life. That you live long enough for everything for the wheels to begin to fall off. Yes. But nobody gets out alive. That's the thing about life. Nobody gets out alive. All right. Anyway, so that's the story. That's the story of my dad. 603-250-6007 is the number. 603-250-6007. I think we will, just to remind you, if you're just joining us, it is Tuesday, so we'll be joined in the second hour by Mike Sudderth for his weekly Tweakonomics segment. And by the way, so just a few, we'll do a few quick things here. Because we only have about 20 minutes or so left in the first hour of the show. But you may have noticed I opened with a Neil Young song, Rockin' in the Free World. And I was, the reason Neil Young specifically was on my mind is he has been in the news. He wants all of his, here it is. It's this is being reported in multiple news outlets, but this is interesting to me for a couple of different reasons. We talk on the show a lot. A consistent topic has been deplatforming and arguments for and against it. And deplatforming, of course, when a company, be it a social media company or a streaming service like Spotify, for example, when they decide to restrict your content or to remove you from your platform, and how that all works and who it happens to and whether or not it's fair and all the ancillary debates and arguments around that issue. But we find ourselves here in this particular instance in a situation where Spotify is not necessarily the ones who are saying, okay, we have content here that may violate our community standards, I'm sure they don't call them community standards at Spotify because it's not social media, unlike Facebook, for example. But we have content on our platform that we don't necessarily object to as a company, but someone else whose content we also stream on our platform has a problem with this other content that is streaming. In this case, a musician whose music is on the platform, this musician has a problem with some podcast content that is streaming on Spotify. Here is what has happened. Reuters, this article is from Reuters. Neil Young to Spotify, either remove my music or the Joe Rogan podcast. Now, I think we all know, if Neil Young is serious about this, we all know how this ends up. I mean, I don't know legally if, I don't know what kind of deals are in place and if Neil Young can even actually just say, take my music off of Spotify. But if Spotify is in a position where they have to choose between Neil Young and Joe Rogan, they're going to go with Joe Rogan. I mean, they didn't back a Brinks truck up to Joe Rogan's front door just to turn around and say, oh, we have an artist who has a problem with your show, so now you got to go. That's not going to happen. But Rogan has come under some criticism, of course, for disinformation about vaccines. He's not necessarily anti-vax, but he does kind of do a thing where he sort of downplays COVID. He doesn't seem to think COVID is that big of a deal. I guess because when he got COVID, he's rich, so he was able to have access to all these medications and treatments and quote unquote throw the kitchen sink at it, as he put it in the video that he posted. So a lot of people, I've noticed this, and I don't mean this as a criticism of Joe Rogan specifically, but I've noticed that some people who get COVID, and I'm talking about people who are ideologically prone to sort of not take COVID seriously or to not necessarily be pro-vax. Some of these people, when they do inevitably get COVID, if it goes relatively well for them and they don't end up in the hospital or they don't end up terribly, terribly sick, there's a narcissism that is endemic, if I may use that term, I think in the belief systems of some of these folks who sort of lean that way, and that they go, basically, well, I had COVID and I survived, so I don't see what the big deal is. And that tends to be their attitude. Completely oblivious to the fact that, millions of other people have gotten it and died, and our healthcare system is at the breaking point because our hospitals are, they none of that matters to them. They can only see inward, and they say, well, for me, it wasn't a big deal, so I don't know what everyone's freaking out about. You know what I mean? It's just this narcissism of, well, it hasn't, it didn't kill me, so why are you worried about it? And it's just how some people are. And we live in a very narcissistic culture. And that's something we've learned through this pandemic, is just how narcissistic and selfish our culture can be. But so here's the Reuters article. It says, Neil Young has threatened to pull his music from Spotify streaming service in protest of its relationship with podcaster Joe Rogan, who the prolific singer-songwriter accuses of spreading misinformation about COVID-19, according to media reports. Young, who survived polio as a child, briefly posted a letter on his website addressed to his manager and his record label, Warner Music, demanding that Spotify no longer carry his music. The letter was later deleted. That's interesting. Young wrote in the letter, quote, I want you to let Spotify know immediately today that I want all my music off their platform. They can have Rogan or Young, not both. I am doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them, unquote. Rogan, 54, is the host of the Joe Rogan Experience, the top-rated podcast on Spotify, which has exclusive rights to the program. As of today, Young's music, including such songs as Heart of Gold, Rockin' in the Free World, and Old Man, was still available on the service, as was Rogan's podcast. Spotify, Warner Music Group, and the Joe Rogan Experience did not immediately respond to requests for comment. A representative for Young could not be reached. Rogan, who began his career as a stand-up comedian, has long stirred controversy with his views on the pandemic, government mandates, and vaccines to control the spread of the coronavirus. He has questioned the need for COVID-19 vaccines on his show and said he used ivermectin, an anti-parasite drug that has no proven benefit against COVID. In the letter, Young singled out one episode in which a Rogan guest was pushing debunked anti-vaccine theories. Young's letter noted that Rogan's podcast draws 11 million listeners each episode and highlighted that Spotify lacks a misinformation policy. Spotify began carrying Rogan's podcast in September as part of its efforts to transform itself into the Netflix of audio. Rogan maintains full creative control over the show. Earlier this month, 270 scientists and medical professionals signed an open letter to Spotify to take action against Rogan, accusing him of spreading falsehoods on the podcast. So there you go. I have some mixed feelings and some inner conflict over this. And I will tell you what those are, and I would love to hear some of the thoughts of you all on this. So, obviously, if you're a regular listener of the show, I'm very pro-vaccine. I am a self-described COVID hawk. I want to do whatever we can and whatever we have to stamp out this terrible virus, etc. I'm pro-vaccine, I'm pro-mask, I'm pro-social distancing, I'm pro doing whatever we have to do. And I take COVID very seriously. I see it as an existential threat. I don't, when I see these stories in the news about, for example, these anti-vax, conservative talk show hosts, there's been 5 or 6 of them, I think, regional conservative radio talk show hosts who would go on their shows every day and preach their anti-vax COVID denier message and then get COVID and then end up on a ventilator and then end up dead. I'm never one to dance on anyone's grave. I wouldn't do that, but I don't have any empathy for those people either. That's what they chose to do. And the consequence, for not only spreading misinformation, but in their cases, believing their own BS, resulted in their deaths. I don't know. You make your choice. What's the expression? You play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? So where I get conflicted though is, so I'm certainly not going to sit here and say, I think Joe Rogan should be taken off of Spotify. I don't know that Joe Rogan is anti-vax. I think he's vaccine skeptical. I don't think he particularly downplays COVID other than, again, he's kind of got that attitude of, well, I had it and for me it wasn't a big deal. So again, that's just narcissism, but that's so common in our culture, in our society, you almost don't notice it, right? So, but I don't, it's not as though Rogan doesn't go on his show. As far as I know, I haven't seen any evidence of this and say, I don't think you should take COVID seriously. I don't think you should get vaccinated. But part of Rogan's format is having these very open discussions, typically around 3 hours. He'll bring on a guest. And the thing that I do like about Rogan and that I respect about him is he has such a natural curiosity that he's able to bring people on and have these. I could not do it. I could not do it. The introvert in me would not allow me to sit with a single person, or sometimes a couple of people. He might have a couple of people on at once, and have a 3-hour uninterrupted conversation. I couldn't do it. But I mean, I could do a 3-hour show. I did do a 3-hour show here once when something happened, and it was on a Thursday, and Ben wasn't able to be here for the weekly die-on, but for some reason there wasn't a replay or something. And I think twice now I've done a 3-hour show for various circumstances that have arisen. But so I can do that. But to sit with the same person for 3 hours and have a conversation that doesn't, I mean, it might ebb and flow a little bit, but, it doesn't lag, it doesn't drag, that would be incredibly challenging for me. So I respect anyone who can do that, who can actually pull that off. That's impressive to me. And he has such a natural curiosity about his guests and about what their interests are and what they're curious about. And that is impressive to me. That's not a skill that I like to think I'm a good interviewer, but again, I couldn't do what he does. That is not in my skill set. So he has people on, from what I've seen. He has people on, and they have an extended, deep dive conversation about these things. And I don't necessarily, if he has a guest on, and he has had guests on who are scientists, who are very pro-vaccine, and who try to explain to him this is why it's important. I don't necessarily want him, to be honest with you, to just agree and say, oh, okay, I get it now. I mean, I kind of want that, but I don't necessarily not want him to push back on anything either. Because I think for compelling content, it's good to have some questioning and some, really, are you sure about this? And maybe a little bit of skepticism, right? But I would prefer that even with all of that you end up in a place where hopefully we can all agree. And again, I know this is fantasy stuff because we live in the United States of anti-science, but hopefully you end up at a place where we all agree that, yes, we need to deal with this problem. And yes, we should get as many people vaccinated as possible. And no, you shouldn't choose to buy in to crackpot conspiracy theories that you see on fringe websites and YouTube videos instead of having a conversation with your doctor. So hopefully that's where we can arrive. So I don't know that I quite agree that Rogan is actually overtly spreading vaccine misinformation. I almost don't even know how much it would matter if that was what he was overtly doing, because I feel like, from what I've seen, once someone decides that that's just who they are ideologically, it's really hard to move them. I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but it's hard to move them off of that. Case in point, our former president, Donald Trump. I believe most MAGA people, would follow him anywhere, except there apparently is a swath of Trumpers who are not really wild about him being pro-vaccine. I wish he would make more of an effort. I want to see him on Tucker Carlson. You know what I want to see? I want to see him on the Joe Rogan Experience, talking about the importance of getting vaccinated. Rogan is not a fan of Trump. He's made that clear. He supported Bernie in the last election. But I don't know that Rogan is having a particularly negative effect anywhere. And as far as Neil Young goes, Neil Young can afford to take a stand like this because he must know. If Spotify is in a position of having to choose between him and Rogan, they choose Rogan. Rogan's their marquee name. But artists make very, very little money from streaming. So it's not going to be a hit to Neil Young's bank account. He's not going to feel it in his wallet if all of a sudden his music is no longer available for streaming on Spotify, and he's a big enough, famous enough musician, it's really not going to affect him at all. He's set. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Hey, Matt, it's Ron. How you doing, bud?
Good, Ron. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Thumbs up on your father's health and his keys and all that stuff. That's good to hear. But I got a question for you now. I guess I try to take in as much information as I can, and then as time goes on, I just keep moving it to the back and taking in new information. So people, the majority of the people in the United States, and it's obviously as worldwide is important, but let's just say United States, are 80% or less vaccinated?
I wish. Oh God, I wish it was that high. Last I knew,
it's not that high.
No, I think we're only at 62, maybe 63%, as far as at least fully vaccinated. Yeah, which is 2 shots.
Well, then my next question, follow up to that. It used to be every day, every article of every newspaper or media post that so many people have died. Well, less people are dying, though, correct? I mean, obviously there are still people dying, but less people are dying, and that's because of the vaccination, yes?
Well, that helps, but I think it's a combination of things. Obviously, yes, the vaccines help keep people from dying, but also Omicron, the newest variant, and hopefully the last one, is less deadly, apparently less severe, which is helpful too. Also, treatments and ways to deal with this, that continues to evolve. But unfortunately, there are still a lot of people dying, and a lot of people, our hospitals are in a terrible situation because we're in a situation now, and I'm not great at math, but I know that. So you have a smaller percentage of people dying with Omicron, but because Omicron is so transmissible, you have a smaller percentage of people dying or ending up in the hospital, but that doesn't mean you actually have fewer people dying or ending up in the hospital because it's a smaller percentage, but Omicron is so dominant, much more so than Delta. So we're not in a great place. I mean, we're getting there.
Is the virus itself starting to subside, or is it just as strong as it always has been?
Well, that's a great. By the way, Mike Sudderth is here. Hello, Mike.
Hi there.
Feel free to chime in if you have any thoughts on this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
But so there is a level of cautious optimism, Ron, that with Omicron, because Omicron is less severe, seems to be less severe, that the virus may be, as it increases in transmissibility, because Omicron is so contagious, as the transmissibility increases, the severity might be lessening. Now, if things go well, what may happen is, and again, there's some very, very cautious optimism that this might be the case, is Omicron might be the last big wave, and that with Omicron, we begin to cross that bridge from pandemic to endemic, because we're never going to get rid of it entirely. But so this might work out okay, and things might begin to improve, because I know that in South Africa, for example, where Omicron was first detected, at least heavily, what they saw was a vertical jump in cases, immediate, very, very rapid with Omicron because it is so transmissible. But then when it started to fall, that also was a very fast decrease in infections. And we're starting to see that same trend in the United States and New York City and some other places. It went up really quickly, but now it's starting to come down really quickly, which is good. The nightmare scenario, well, just one more thing, Ron, and then I'll let you respond.
No, go ahead, please. I'm interested.
I just want to finish the thought. The nightmare scenario. So that's the cautiously optimistic scenario. The nightmare scenario is we wake up one day and it's the day after Thanksgiving all over again, where, oh, guess what? Here's a new variant. Oh, guess what? This one looks really bad. So it could go that way too. I prefer to err on the side of cautious optimism. but we'll see.
Does the summer have any effect? There used to be a time where they said they think when summer comes that the virus will diminish in size. Summer, winter have any effect on it at all, or is that just hearsay?
No, I believe so because for a couple of reasons. One is in the summertime, respiratory viruses do not spread as easily in the summer. They don't spread as easily in the hot, humid air as they do in cold, dry air. Which is true of any,
no kidding.
which is true of any respiratory virus. But the other thing too is in the summertime, people are outside more. Once the weather turns cold, people go inside, and if you're in a room with people who are infected versus being outside with people who are infected, because we now know if you're outdoors in the open air, the virus being transmitted is unlikely. But if you're in, if you're in a small room with a bunch of people and somebody's got COVID, well, guess what? Congratulations. You're probably all going to have COVID when you walk out of that room. So
I got one more final COVID question.
Yes.
When COVID first became what it is, it was said to be created in a laboratory, and it was a mistake, and they're saying China. But this Omicron,
it's a theory.
Is that something that happened naturally through nature, or is that part of COVID?
Well, it's part of COVID. The virus just continues to mutate. Mm-hmm. And again, the fear is, the nightmare scenario is it'll continue to mutate into something worse. But from what I understand, though, interestingly, is that the trajectory, and this is where some of that cautious optimism comes from, it is not unusual, epidemiologists have said, for a virus like this to, as it mutates, it becomes more transmissible, but the severity of it continues to lessen. So, because knowing that is not unusual, it is not inconceivable that we may have another variant after Omicron that is even more transmissible than Omicron, but is also even less severe than Omicron.
All right, that's a wrap on the corona thing. It's just I'm sure other people feel the same way. You get a runny nose, or you feel a little down, and you can't help but wonder. But I mean, how often do you just say, it's the flu, and I'll let it go? And when I'm not feeling good, sometimes it's like I don't pursue it, and and it comes and goes. But I know there's a lot of fear in everybody for those same reasons. Now, my next and last final thing, and I'm going to hang up and listen to the radio because I want to hear Mike's reports and knowledge and all of that. I know you guys were busy and you had no chance of watching it, but the Dr. Phil today was discussing Bitcoin, and he had people that said, it's a good thing, and he had other people that said it was a gamble. Yeah. And there was one person that was on there. It was a little 15-year-old girl. She got involved, and I know nothing about what I'm talking about, so I'll repeat it as best I can. But she got involved with something called NTR or something like that.
NFT.
And she had a fascination with the beluga whale. Just that's her thing. Yeah. And so she made some kind of beluga whale thing, something or other, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they introduced it to, I guess, I don't know if I'm going to do a Bitcoin or whatever. Well, to make a long story short, she was selling the stuff for $100 a piece or something like that. In 10 hours, she became a millionaire and then some. Mm-hmm. And thank God, because this girl, she gave $50,000 to the beluga whale fund, and then to the oceanography people, and she gave away a ton of money. But like I say, there were 50% of the people said Bitcoin is a big gamble, and then the other 50% was saying no. It's if you do it don't do it out of impulse. Be prepared to what you're doing and stuff, and you can make money. And that was it. Like I said, the girl she was within 10 hours. She did whatever she did and made $1 million.
We were talking about that yesterday.
With that being said, I'm going to turn on the radio, and thank you for your time.
All right, Ron. Thank you for the call, my friend. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I think Ron meant NFTs. We were talking about that on the show yesterday. Christian Lacoste was here with me, DJ Reckless, and we were talking about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And I I guess the Nelk boys. Are you familiar with the Nelk boys?
I am.
Mike?
Yeah. I've.
You are?
I've put my toe in the water of all of that stuff, and
Yeah.
I think I had mentioned when I was a finance manager in another part of my career a very long time ago, and got exposed to investments and stuff back with traditional investments, stocks and bonds and what was regular currency trading. The yen versus the dollar and the British pound versus the Deutschmark, and now I'm dating myself. But so I was familiar with when Bitcoin came out. I kind of tried to educate myself in it. In what I'm sorry, who was the caller? You didn't? I didn't hear the name.
Ron.
Oh, Ron. Okay. There's it all investing is speculation. I don't care if you buy John Deere or General Electric or Apple and you put your money in there. It's speculation.
Yep.
They are good guesses. There are good bets. But some would say it's the same as playing poker. Maybe not as crazy as pulling a slot machine.
No such thing as a sure thing.
Yeah, there really isn't. And you can play Monday morning quarterback all day long. My dad once said that somebody told him to buy John Deere back in the 50s, and he said, I'd be driving a different car right now if that was the case.
Right.
But that's hindsight. And this, the same thing with Apple, or in the early 80s, like, well, that's a tech stock that's highly speculative, and
yeah,
if you hold on to something long enough, I don't want to get into investing theory and all this, but long-term investing is always kind of the smart side of it. Mm-hmm. But do people, like in real estate investing, buy a building and then sell it 2 months later and get rich? Like the scenario he said, this woman, came up with her own currency or whatever. Yeah, that stuff does happen, but that's no way to make a living,
Right.
Because the inverse of that happens as well.
Yes,
I put all my money in one direction and I bet on Mike Sudderth or Grant Lampton, the musician, and he never took off, and I lost all my money.
Right.
That is more the common scenario. Like any small business that starts, it's more common that things fail than they do, because if it was a sure bet, everybody would be doing it.
Right.
And people do make money in cryptocurrency, but it is more common, I believe, and it's why I'm out of the game altogether. It's a lot of work too. It's a 24-hour game to try to watch this stuff.
Yeah.
I dabbled in regular currency trading for a while, but it's a 24-hour game. If you're looking at the yen versus the dollar, that stuff starts trading in the middle of the night, and that's not stuff I wanted to pay attention to. But it does happen. But the best way to make money is to work hard.
Yeah.
I think my dad taught me that well.
Were you hinting that there's a Grant Lampton NFT?
No,
coming?
No. Not as yet, anyway.
Yeah.
I have no financial backers at the moment, other than the folks who are kind enough to pay me when I play.
Yeah.
But the NFT stuff it's speculation. It's pure speculation.
Yeah.
And I'm not to say, they always say invest money that you can afford to lose in those type of directions.
Yeah.
Your 401ks and things like this, blue chip stocks, that's one thing. But the NFTs and all of these speculative type of stocks, you got to be prepared to lose that and not whine and moan about it. Like I can't pay my mortgage now because I put, the last year of my salary into an NFT. Now, if that happens to you and you can buy a yacht and all that, more power to you. But most of us live on an income stream such that, I need most all of my income to keep the wheels turning.
Yeah.
And anything extra I have, I'm going to travel and buy myself something nice to eat.
The Nelk boys made, you probably saw this, thing, $23 million.
Yeah. But that's a fluke, man. Because if that was the norm, everybody'd be doing it. And that's really what you have to look at. Elon Musk, they say, is like a fluke. No, he's a very, very intelligent guy who had a heck of a lot of financial backing. I mean, the guy didn't come, he wasn't sleeping under a bridge one day and then the next day he's Tesla and SpaceX. It didn't work like that. He was a very, very intelligent guy who worked hard.
Yeah.
And he had a ton of financial backing, and that's something that, like, I couldn't go out and say, hey, lend me $50 million. I have a great idea. Sure, Mike. Sure you do.
And his Elon Musk's turn hosting Saturday Night Live, it was okay. Wasn't terrible.
I really like how he, I appreciate him more than ever when he came out, and I don't know if he did it through the New York Post or something, but I guess he's on the spectrum somewhere. If you know what I'm saying.
I didn't know that, but at the same time, I also feel like everyone kind of suspected he might be.
Well, and I think he was honest about it. And he's like, it was after Saturday Night Live, and he kind of, whatever outlet that I heard it from, he's like, well, that's why I'm funny, because I'm quote unquote funny.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, that makes perfect sense. Now, like when I see him and I hear him talk, I kind of look at through the lens like he's not like, a lot of other people. He's a little different. And, folks on the I hesitate to touch on this stuff, but like the ABA or autism spectrum, and there's all kinds of different, there's a portion of those that, they can play Tchaikovsky on the piano after listening to it once. And, they have they have separate talents than, somebody who'd say, your normal, grade B person.
You can be enormously successful, being on the spectrum. There's a lot of people,
right?
Like
but he wasn't, like the guys you just mentioned. He wasn't, overnight.
Right.
He made a gamble on something, and it changed his life forever. He worked hard, and he is a young guy still, but he made his living, and again had an enormous amount of financial backing that it wasn't his own or his parents. It was infused into him. So.
I didn't realize until a couple of years ago that I was a huge Talking Heads fan growing up. I love the Talking Heads.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't realize that David Byrne is on the spectrum. But
Absolutely.
But again, it's one of those things where you kind of go, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I never knew it until a couple of years ago, but at the same time, I was not the slightest bit surprised.
Yeah, no, it stopped making sense. There's a joke in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But his brilliance is he does something that nobody else can do, or he's unable to do stuff. He probably couldn't work at Walmart, or manage Home Depot or something. But can he come up with musical ideas and project his ideas in a way that even a musician like myself never could? He's on the spectrum. You got to think like folks like Jim Morrison were too, and to that point, Charles Manson probably was too.
Yeah.
Depends on how it gets applied, I guess.
Right. Well, he was a talented musician, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Songwriter.
Yeah. Just things went awry, I guess.
That's right. Yes. Let's see. Before we, so in a moment we'll take a break and we'll get to Mike's Tweakonomics. But I did see a few interesting comments in the Facebook live chat. Melanie La Liberty from the great state of Vermont, and this goes back to the Joe Rogan podcast. She says they should have some kind of a disclaimer saying his statements are not based on actual data. Sounds like that is Neil Young's issue with Rogan, or info is shared based on personal opinion disclaimer. Jeff Nyan in the chat says Neil Young has an estimated net worth of $200 million. I think he'll be fine. Yeah, these artists make very little money from streaming. Like that's the like Taylor Swift. She's one of the people who's openly complained about it.
Yes.
On Spotify or what's the other big one? iTunes or whatever.
Pandora.
They're all
Pandora.
Pandora. That's the one I was looking for. Yeah. They make. I mean, it's very grim as far as
right. Getting a penny or two.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have the time bandwidth here, but I wanted to chime in on this, which has nothing to do with my next segment here. But I will tell you folks out there who know me as a musician, I am a huge Neil Young fan. I've followed around and seen him a few times rather. I actually got to know one of his photographers through a separate. He's actually the guy who photographs the Bruins and the Red Sox in Boston. His name's Steve Babineau, and he actually was one of the tour photographers. So whenever he came to the Northeast, this guy, Steve, who's a good friend of mine, he's like, I know Neil, and I know Peggy, and he and I got through the years. We started a Neil Young cover band together.
Oh, no kidding.
Called the Grey Guns. Yeah, we covered all kinds of Neil Young stuff, and when he played here at the Verizon, he said, come on down to the pit. I got you a stage pass and all this stuff. I was crazy about Neil Young, and am. I play a lot of his songs in my solo acoustic sets. And I respect him a lot and appreciate his electric stuff and his solo acoustic stuff. And when I heard this stuff just this morning about, or actually it was yesterday, it's Neil said it's either Joe Rogan or me. And I said, oh gosh, I hate it when musicians get into politics, And
do you?
I do because, like when the Grateful Dead, I'm a Grateful Dead nut and always had been. And back in the day, they did a big push to, vote. And that's good, right? Let's get everybody to go out and vote. That's one thing. And then they kind of came out that they were like, we're Team Obama. Like, that's great. You got the platform to do it. That's fine. But I kind of like, gosh, to me, that's like, we like the Cincinnati Reds and hate the Red Sox. That's like you're a musician and I appreciate your music. So I don't care that you like the Cincinnati Reds or hate the Red Sox or, you know what I mean? I'm trying to make an analogy. So when I heard this, he hates Joe Rogan because of his political views, I'm like, gosh, is that really the platform? And, I can't say, let's say you or I, made $1 bazillion as a musician or a performer or an actor, whatever. Would I be able to restrain myself by saying, my political views are what everybody should believe? It seems a little out of place. But they've got that platform. But it like he or me, I don't even listen to Joe Rogan. I know his point of view, and I have heard him. I don't run home from work and listen to it, and put on a podcast or listen to it in the car. I know his point of view. It's like Dan Bongino, like I know his point of view, and I know he's extremely popular. And if I see him on TV, I see him. But I don't want to hear him say, I hate the Denver Broncos.
Right.
I'd be like why are we talking about this? And
right.
I kind of took it like this. And now they're talking about a platform, Spotify specifically, like if he wants to pull stuff off of Spotify, that's his prerogative. But it just seems a little broad. You know what I mean? It's different than like Betty White being an advocate for, the ASPCA. Like that's one thing. But when I hear, who was the female comedian who like came out with Trump's head?
Kathy Griffin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, what does that have to do with you being funny? It just always kind of, and of course, that may start with like, well, I had an affinity for Trump at the time, and what was she messing with that? But had she come out with Biden's head, like what are you doing?
Yeah,
that's not funny. I grew up in the age where Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and I don't know if George Carlin is a good example, but they really didn't. If they beat up on somebody who was tongue in cheek, it wasn't like, I hate this approach. And, if you're one of my fans, please listen to what I have to say. And I don't see them meshing really well together. It bugs me. And
yeah, I know a lot of people feel that way. I personally have never felt that way. I don't quite get it. Like, to me, it's just whether I agree with Neil Young or not. Why shouldn't, I guess I just look at it as, why shouldn't someone be free to say whatever they want politically? Like, my favorite band is Kiss, as you know, and Gene Simmons has said some things politically over the years that just where I went like, what? Like, I remember it must have been 2012. Gene Simmons was saying very, very nice things about Rick Perry. At that time, Texas, the governor of Texas, and seemed to support him. He stopped short of endorsing him, but in some random interview, he said, "I'm telling you, I think Rick Perry would be a great president." And I remember thinking, "Wow," because I personally think Rick Perry is reprehensible, and I was like, "Ooh," but it doesn't make me feel like, well, Gene shouldn't say that. I mean, if that's how he feels, hey, speak your truth, brother. Like it doesn't affect how I feel about him or how I feel about his music or anything. It's just like, okay, well, that's something where Gene and I really disagree, but I don't begrudge him saying it. If he wants to tell the world he loves Rick Perry, sure, whatever, good for him.
So is my sports analogy okay? Like if Gene says like I'm a Yankees fan, like that's great, Gene, you're a Yankees fan. I don't know what that has to do with Dr. Love and Christine 16. That's why I listen to you.
I think maybe part of it too, though. Well, I mean, the sport. I get the sports analogy. I'm not a sports guy, so I don't care what team anybody likes. So that would never affect me at all. But I'm always kind of curious. Part of it might be this, why I'm not bothered by it. I'm always so curious about what people think about politics that I almost, even if somebody says something that I just don't understand, like I at the time, and as I say it today, I don't understand Gene's affinity for Rick Perry, but I'd rather know that. I don't know if I'm articulating this quite right, but I'd rather know that than not know that about him, because I just think it's interesting, because I just think I'm so interested in, as part of what interests me about politics and why I like discussing politics. I'm always interested in what people think, but also why they think what they think.
Yes.
So when I read an article where Gene Simmons says that, not only does it not bother me, I kind of want to know more. Like, it's like, I wish I could interview him and ask him, why do you like Rick Perry so much? Because I'm genuinely curious. You know what I mean?
Sure. So and I think that shows, a depth of thinking on your part, which I don't know if it's fair for me to say that most people don't think that way. That's not the right thing to say, but
you're right, though.
I think a lot of people stop at, oh, well, Gene likes Rick Perry, so I'm done with Kiss. I think there's
Yeah.
that segment of the population
Oh yeah.
that, I loved John Cougar Mellencamp, but I found out he was an Obama supporter, and now I don't like him. I think there's
Yeah.
that segment of the population.
Yeah.
My belief, and I think there's plenty of people like me, is like, why are we talking about this? Like, again, like, I
Right.
don't care that you're a 49ers fan and I'm sorry to use a sports analogy if you're
Yeah.
not, but it's
No,
like,
I get it, though.
use it like a music thing, like, why don't you love Metallica? You and I have talked about the sport, like,
Yeah.
because I don't like Metallica. Well, there's something wrong with you. No, there's not. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
There's not. It's just, it's like it's like licorice or broccoli,
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be, and especially when you're looking from the outside looking in,
Yeah.
what's important that attracted to this person, we all, I love Gene Simmons and Kiss. I grew up on this stuff, and I'm an Ace Frehley guy.
Yeah.
But what his political affiliation, or whether he likes oysters or not, or whether he likes the Patriots or not, I'm interested in knowing that and maybe why, but that doesn't make me think, well, they are deficient.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or they're short-sighted or myopic on some level for not understanding the things the way I understand them. And
Right.
that when you get in, and I try to stay away from this stuff in my segment with you guys, because it's not fair, and it's not really worth talking about. You and I believe, down to brass tacks, probably have some political differences, maybe some musical differences or whatever differences, and that's not what we're here to talk about. It's fun to dance around and to find out why.
Yeah.
But it's the folks who are black and white about it, if you will.
Yeah.
That, like, oh, because, you're a Yankees fan, so I can't hang out with you. Or,
Yeah.
you like broccoli and I hate broccoli, so there's something wrong with you. And when you put this in the political context, it is more interesting to find out why,
Yeah.
like what motivated you. And it could be because Gene Simmons used to live in California, maybe owns a ranch in Texas, and he pays less taxes. That's what I'd like to think or,
Yeah. Yeah.
or maybe they exchange cards and their wives know each other, or
Right. Right.
in Gene's case, many wives.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. So I've never had that thing. It's like, I certainly don't like Ted Nugent's politics, but doesn't.
Great example.
But it doesn't mean I enjoy the guitar solo on Tail Gunner any less.
Exactly. Exactly. The Great White Buffalo is great, and he's eccentric about his politics, especially in his older years.
Yeah.
To the point that and I lean on his side of the aisle certainly, but I think he's a little eccentric in his older years now. That hey, watch me shoot a deer and eat it in front of you, and like, okay, Ted, can we talk about hibernation and the Amboy Dukes and the stuff that I got into you for? Whether you want to take out the mayor of Detroit, it kind of has nothing to do that I love the guitars you play and the music you played, back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of an effort, but you have to separate that stuff. But it is darn interesting to know, like, well, why do you think that, Ted?
Right. Right.
And, is that the way he was brought up? And if that's his conviction, there's a very slim chance as an adult you're going to change somebody's conviction. There really is. And if you can be one of these, I'd like to think a fewer group of the population that is open-minded enough. As much as I think I'm open-minded, I'm probably not. At some level, it stops.
Well,
if you wanted to talk straight politics with me, at some point I'm going to say, look, there's nothing you can say that's going to convince me. We can talk about it and have a banter about it, but my conviction is my conviction, and my beliefs are my beliefs.
Yeah, I think you may sell yourself a little short, though, when you say that, because we've had conversations. I mean, probably more so off air about political stuff, where you've told me that you've shifted on some things over the years.
Yeah.
Where you have become, because I think you're right. Like most people, I think probably by the age of 30, in both politics and in music, they become sort of almost calcified in what they think and what their tastes are, and I think very few people will change their mind, and most people, especially with politics, once they pick an ideology, they're solid in that and whatnot. But you've told me just with people you've met over the years and different ideas that you've been exposed to that you've shifted on some things or become more open to things. So I think you're an example of someone who you're not. I don't perceive you as being, because I think most people are sort of by a certain point in life, they're just kind of shut down to any outside information or anything that conflicts with their pre-existing belief system.
Yes.
But I don't perceive you that way. I perceive you as being a much more open-minded, and I mean, obviously you have your core beliefs and you have your values and so forth, like everyone does. But I also think you're open to new information.
I appreciate that, and I guess I am. I think what I'm thinking about is when you go into the little booth and you pull the curtain behind you.
Yeah.
You're going to do what you're going to do.
Right.
Please.
Right. Yeah. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Matt, Ron, one
Hey,
more
Ron.
thing.
Yes.
Because you and Mike are both musicians, I'm listening to the politics part of this, and I'm very, I'm in tune. But I have to ask you, did you guys hear on Peter's show today, Katie and her father playing guitar and singing?
I heard a little bit. I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but I heard some of it. And yeah, that was really cool.
That was really cool. And her father reminds me of Mike because he's into the Neil Young and the old, the stuff out of the 70s, and he was just playing his guitar and singing. It was like, wow, they are so good. So that's why I kind of wanted to know if either one of you guys had heard it. That's how good they were.
Yeah, I heard some of it, yeah.
Who was on the show this morning? I'm sorry.
So Katie, I forget Katie's last name. I think it's
Master something, Master.
Yes,
I don't know. I forget her last name. It's a big name.
So she's on the morning show quite often now, and then her dad was there too.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
And they both played, and she has she's got a beautiful singing voice, very talented, and then her dad also, it turns out, very I didn't see. It's funny, when I first turned on the show, I didn't realize that was her dad. And then I was like, oh my God, oh, that's so cool. So they're on the show together. Yeah. That was very cool.
And they're both into the guitar. I mean, she's been playing since she was 15. I mean, or whatever, for years. She's been playing for 15 years, and that's all. I really hate to interrupt what you guys were already talking about, but I was so impressed with what I heard today, and you guys both being musicians, I just had to know if you heard it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back and listen to the rest of it later.
I will as well.
Absolutely.
Good. That's great. I'm glad to hear you say that.
I was going to give Katie.
Guys,
thank you, man.
I won't interrupt anymore. Thank you.
That's okay. Thanks, Rob.
I appreciate it. I was going to give a shout out to Katie, actually.
Oh.
I was at the Puritan back room yesterday. I had a friend of mine, Steph Murphy. She and her daughter were down there, and I got a call from my wife, and she's like, hey, go down and have a slice of pizza with Steph and her daughter. She has this little daughter named Phoenix. So I go down there, and sure enough, Katie, who does work at the back room, she was there, and I know her as a server or a bartender there, only on a first-name basis. And she said, I've got to go because I have radio in the morning. And I turned around and I said, oh, you're on the radio? And she said, yes, 95.3 WMNH. And I was like, Shazam, I am too. She's like, yeah, I'm on the morning show with Peter White. And of course, we got into this long conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Peter's the one who turned me on to Ween. And, he's the beau of my ex-wife and, lovely guy and don't have a damn bad thing to say about him. And she's like, wow. And I had to tell her the whole story, and she told me her story. But I'm sorry, I didn't know it was this morning.
Yeah.
But she's very, very sweet, normal woman. And forgive me for saying normal. It sounds like when you call somebody normal, it's not a compliment. Sorry, Katie, if you're listening. But she's very sweet, very approachable, and I was very pleased. So I was going to give her a shout out tonight if she's listening.
Oh, very nice.
I said, yeah, I'm going to be on with Maddie on Tuesdays, and if you ever care to listen, and occasionally on with dear Rob Acevedo.
Yes, very cool, very cool. By the way, Melanie, she was listening to the morning show and points out too that Kyle got tasered this morning, and it was fantastic.
No doubt.
That sounds like a bad idea, but I was listening to it. Quite entertaining, yes. Well, here's what we're going to do. So we're going to take because it's already 5:30, we're going to take a very quick break. We're going to show some love to our amazing sponsors so we can pay the bills, and then we will come back. And Mike Sudderth is here. We're going to do some Tweakonomics, so don't go away. More to come. Come on down to the Hop Knot at 1000 Elm Street, Manchester's premier craft beer and gourmet pretzel bar. Tell us more, Trudy.
We make our dough fresh every day. We make a variety of styles of pretzels and serve craft beer, cocktails, and a few bottles of wine. We do the traditional pretzel, and we have multiple flavors for that. We also do stuffed pretzels, pretzel sandwiches, free dessert pretzels, and pretzel knots.
The Hop Knot in the Brady Sullivan Plaza at 1000 Elm Street.
Bring your kitchen to life with Queen City Cabinetry, located at 87 Elm Street in the historic Sunbeam Mall in Manchester. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They can be reached at 603-222-2007 or on the web at queencitycabinetrynh.com. Come see the possibilities. Queen City Cabinetry, another proud sponsor of WMNH.
This hour on WMNH is sponsored by CGI Business Solutions, located at 5 Dartmouth Drive in Auburn. They serve all your business needs, including employee benefits planning, corporate design and business administration, investments and wealth management, and customized business insurance solutions. Their phone number is 866-841-4600 or on the web at cgibusinesssolutions.com.
Are you looking for a job with great benefits, flexible hours, and competitive pay? Then visit us at donutjobs.com. Do you love working with people, a fast-paced environment, and having fun at work? Then visit donutjobs.com. NGP Management is a large Dunkin's franchise with stores throughout New Hampshire, and we are currently hiring for all positions. Who doesn't love free donuts while you work? Visit us at donutjobs.com to apply today.
WMNH, rip the knob off.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Matt Connarton Unleashed as we cruise into our last half hour. We are live from the studios of WMNH 95.3 FM in glorious downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. Also on Comcast 97 if you're in Manchester. And, of course, hello to all of our online listeners across the nation and around the globe. You can go to my website, mattconnerton.com, for all of your live streaming options, social media links, contact info, show archives, etc., etc. Today is Tuesday, January 25, 2022. Well, this month is flying by. Jeez. And, of course, I want to remind you, we are proudly sponsored by the Hop Knot on Elm. They've got the delicious gourmet pretzels, the craft beer. They've got trivia night every Thursday night hosted by the great Bill Cini. Lots coming up for 2022. Don't go there today because Monday and Tuesday is their weekend, but they are open Wednesday through Sunday. It is a great place. If you have anything you'd like to contribute to the upcoming discussion, 603-250-6007 is the number, 603-250-6007. You can also text me at 617-917-4476. Tweet me at Matt Connarton or send an email to matt@mattconnerton.com. And, of course, you can interact and opine in the Facebook live chat. But the best thing to do so that we can hear and enjoy your dulcet tones is give us a call at 603-250-6007. And Mike Sudderth is here at the news desk. And he's ready for some Tweakonomics. He's got the, I notice you're more organized than you used to be. You've got like a little setup there with the notes and everything.
Yeah. I tried using an iPad a couple of times and a little notebook. It seems to work easier with these sticky notes one by one. I'm from the 80s and 90s when I made my money in the working world, and we had sticky notes everywhere. You could look across the street in Boston to the windows, and everybody had sticky notes covered.
Right.
So it seems to work well for me, and I'm glad you noticed because I do try to make an effort here and try to prepare and have something coherent to say to you all.
Very good, very good. Well, I will go ahead and hit the music if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Here we go.
Good evening, Manchester, and around the world, and wherever y'all are listening to WMNH 95.3. My name is Mike Sudderth. This is Tweakonomics on Matt Connarton's Unleashed, and I am quasi-educated in the field of economics. And tonight, I'm going to get a little weird with you guys. I did have the opportunity to travel as a young man, both for school and for work. I went to school for a couple of years in Frankfurt, Germany, and had the opportunity to work both in Oxford, England, and just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And So, but some of the stuff that I'm going to bring up to you guys here tonight, just to try to poke your interest, I do have a little bit of experience when I was younger, so I just didn't read the stuff in a magazine. And of course, the topics I'm going to speak about tonight are current stuff. But I was in Germany back when there was an East Germany and a West Germany, and we all thought we were going to be bombed into obliteration by the Russians and this and that. And it's really interesting now what's going on. And I was going to talk, I try to talk about economics and the goofy stuff about economics here in America, but I got to tell you, I'm bored to tears right now with what's going on, the big sell-off in the markets. And, I'm not going to bring up the I word, if you know what that is. And I think we beat that dead horse. So we're going to talk about some global stuff here. And if you would please, Matt did mention the number to you, 603-250-6007. If you want to jump in here, again, I just like to try to spark a topic. And there's going to be some political stuff that I'm going to mention here. And I'm not advocating for one way or the other than to just try to start a conversation, which undoubtedly will happen. So let's go immediately over to Western Europe or Eastern Europe or somewhere thereabouts, Ukraine. We've got over 100,000 troops amassing on the border of Ukraine. And I don't mean to chuckle at that, but it's a power play by the Russians. If you want to group it under one person, they say Vladimir Putin, but it's not just him. It's the whole Russian army that is amassing on the eastern border of Ukraine. If you know anything about geography, eastern Ukraine is actually Russian speaking and somewhat loyal or have positive feelings towards the Russian government and the Russian people because moms and grandmothers and grandfathers and folks like that came from there. The western part and the central part of Ukraine, Kiev and to the west, is more of a fiercely patriotic and, feels like folks who went, like the Polish people with perestroika and that type of stuff, that they still have a very fresh one-generation feeling of we're independent and fiercely independent. We're Ukrainian. We're not Russian. Just like the Poles are Polish.
They're ready to fight.
Yeah, and fight to the death, because they within one generation know, hey, my uncle was abducted by the Russians, and they did some pretty terrible stuff to him. And, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but, the Russians don't give two hoots about the Geneva Convention,
right?
If you know what I mean. I don't want to bore you with that stuff. But if they get you, they do some pretty weird stuff to you. It's not that they throw you in Gitmo and, let you rot there with a TV and a laptop. So here we are. We've got 100,000 plus Russian troops on the border of Ukraine. We've got, so our president's response, President Biden said, okay, in a response, just, you have to play the saber rattling battle here. We've got 8,500 troops on high alert in America. So let's do the math. I'm not good at math either, Maddie, but 100,000 versus 8,500. You have to think like Vladimir Putin's like, oh, that's very nice. Very nice. You got 8,500. If that's a Russian accent, I don't know. But it's to me is somewhat trivial. So the chess game, what I think the analogy is like, gosh, we're playing checkers, they're playing chess, like multi-dimensional chess. And we're playing checkers to be like, all right, well, we've got 8,500 troops on high alert. They've already got 100,000 plus troops there. And I try to, you dial it back and you think, okay, are they going to invade it? Like, is this a land grab or is this really a buffer zone? And after hearing some stuff and reading up on some stuff, I don't think they are trying to grab the country of Ukraine like they did Crimea, which isn't that's a territory. I don't think it's a country, but they did take Crimea. I don't know that their intention, and please call in and correct me if I'm wrong, is to take over Ukraine. I think they want a buffer zone because now is the right time with our current American administration and military situation and maybe what happened after Afghanistan, put it all together. Maybe now is time that Vladimir Putin and his cabinet are saying, hey, maybe we could use like a 1,000-mile buffer because NATO is a big thing. NATO is a thing that's what's knocking on Russia's door.
Yes.
If something were to go awry. And everybody, any intelligent world power has to have this in the back of their mind. So I'm not looking at, Jen Psaki said today that, let's be clear here that Russia is the aggressor.
Mm-hmm.
And if Canada amassed 100,000 troops on the North American border here with America, we would think that's aggression. But I think I'm smart enough and have lived long enough to think that I don't know that he is actually here for a land grab. I think he might be doing some saber rattling.
Well,
and wants a buffer.
That's what I think too. My prediction through all this has been, I do not believe he's actually going to invade, because I think it would be, unless he's getting some very bad advice, and we know from history that happens. It's happened here. It happens in other countries too.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes leaders make bad decisions based on bad advice they're getting from advisors and so forth. But it will be disastrous for him if he invades, because first of all, the response. I mean, if that pipeline,
Nord Stream,
thank you. I can never remember the name. If that gets shut off, that's going to be very damaging to the Russian economy, and it's not going to be easy. As you were pointing out, there are parts of it's not going to be as simple as just grabbing Crimea from Ukraine.
Amen.
And so it's going to be a fight. It's going to be very bloody. And I believe that, I think he's after something else. And I think he's after some sort of concession from the West. And obviously he knows, as a negotiating tactic, this maximalist demand that we're going to say, okay, fine, we will never bring Ukraine into NATO. Obviously that's a non-starter. And I agree with the president for being clear on that, you can't allow Russia to dictate to us who gets to be in our club. That is unacceptable. So I think that I think that hopefully the administration can find some sort of off-ramp to offer Putin, because I think that's what he really wants. I think Putin wants to be able to say, look, I got this from NATO. Mm-hmm. I got this from the Americans. They're going to pull out X number of missiles. I guess at one point Putin was publicly saying that we have missiles in places where we don't actually have them in Europe. And it's like, okay, so what is he then going to claim, that he got us to take them out when they were never there? Yep. Something like that. But I agree with you. I hope that we're right.
Uh-huh. Well, I do. Yeah.
But I don't think he's going in.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, our generations have lived through, as I mentioned, when I went to high school in Germany, it was when I went to East Germany for a few days, East Berlin, excuse me. And, there were billboards, anti-American billboards, and it was, statues of Lenin and all this, which weren't threatening. It was just a different country. Germany was a different country. Western Germany was to me at that point. But there was definitely the threat and the propaganda of if somebody could hit the button and we could all be obliterated.
Right.
And it didn't happen. And I like to think that that's embedded, to somebody like me, of my age, it's embedded in me that I'm glad we're not there anymore.
Yeah.
And that there are other options. And, that's just not like the first or second option is to, global thermonuclear warfare.
Right.
Is not the first or second option. And he's smarter than that. I like to think that Vladimir Putin, for whatever differences, and there are a heck of a lot of differences. When I was reading up on this stuff last night, preparing for today, Russia is almost exclusively a Caucasian nation.
Yeah.
Which maybe that has nothing to do with it. It's just that they think differently. They are not a immigrant type of, like England or even Germany. That they've incorporated other nations into their own nation, and they're getting I hate to say globalist because that makes my skin crawl, but that they are integrated into a global economy and a global economy. That's pretty much what it is. We do work with other countries, and the European Union is a great thing. It's very weird, and we're going through our own struggles here in America with that, but Russia's not like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they're bad for doing that. This is, the older I get, I have to try to make an effort, like, how do they think, and how they perceive stuff. It's not that it's bad. It's just that it's very different than the way we perceive things. And, the next point I was going to make here, it's really interesting with the Nord Stream that you mentioned, the pipeline that's coming from Russia to Germany. Germany's a part of NATO now. And Germany is on the sidelines here saying, we're not going to do boo. Because they're paying, their energy prices have spiked like ours, and globally it's gone up. But they are in a very interesting position that, they don't want any conflict. And there are less American forces in Germany. Like when I went to school, there were American bases all over the place.
Yeah.
And at least the kids, I was a kid, 16 years old when I was over there. They weren't real happy about it. And of course, I was young and didn't understand. But the Germans are, this is where we get our energy from almost exclusively. Other than the North Sea oil drilling they do.
They're in a tough spot. Yeah, I mean they're kind of the dissenters right now in NATO on that point.
Yes,
and France too, because I think Germany, they don't want to have to shut off that pipeline. And France, I think actually, I forget what Macron said. Macron disagreed with Biden on something.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what it was about though. Do you?
Well, I believe it was about the energy.
Was it the same about?
The paradigm or what have you, the situation with the energy that, maybe he doesn't want any more grief than, I don't know where they get their energy from exclusively, but they're close to that. And this is going to be really interesting. To get to my next point here, because I know we're getting close on time and I got a bunch of stuff that I wanted to get through.
Yeah.
And we already did this. So Germany in particular, and it reminded me of looking back at history. And, they say if you don't recognize history, it repeats itself, or it's important to study history. I'm a big student of history and I like it. And when stuff like this happens, I like to go back and look at stuff like that was maybe similar. And I came up with the situation of the Suez Canal back in the 50s after the war that the British and the French owned. Mm-hmm. And Eisenhower stepped in and said, no, I'm going to protect the sovereignty of the Egyptians, and the Suez Canal belongs to the Egyptians. And that's what some historians that I read up on said that was pretty much the end of the Grand British Empire and the French Empire, in that America stepped in and said, no, this is or isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And that was, one of the beginnings of America starting to rise and dictating to the West that, like, no, this is what's going to happen. And the diminishing, and I'm speaking extremely broadly here, but, kind of the end of the British Empire, kind of dictating, well, no, this belongs to us. And Eisenhower was to say, no, it doesn't. This is how this is going to work out, which is really weird. Like, this would be like us saying, it happens in Israel and stuff. We have our fingers all over that stuff. But for the most part, we don't. We tried it in Afghanistan, and it's too darn soon after that debacle to say, like, hey, let's go and try to fix this somewhere else. We've got our own problems.
Yeah.
But looking back at what happened to the English and the French with the Suez Canal in the 50s, pretty much was their last world stage, I guess, other than the Falkland Islands, which was, basically a street fight,
We have a call. We'll grab this quickly. Hi, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Hey, Matt, it's Mike Doyle.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, Mike.
Hey, just quickly, just take this whether it's coincidence or not. Keep in mind that when Russia was active in taking in the territory of Crimea was during the Biden-Obama stage, and now there was nothing for 4 years during Trump, and now Biden's in there, and now he's at it again, looking to buy another piece, looking to take over another piece of the territory. And the biggest part of it is, why did Biden, one of the first things he did was drop the sanctions on Germany for the completion of the Nord Stream pipeline. He allowed that to happen. And I don't know if you remember last year, there were a lot of Democrats, like Tim Kaine and Gene Shaheen, and there were a lot of them that were mad he did that he dropped those sanctions on Germany, saying, go ahead, you can finish the pipeline now.
Sanctions on Germany?
So, I don't know, just coincidence, or is he just making all the wrong moves, I guess is the question.
No, you raised some important points, Mike, and having studied on this stuff here, you're absolutely right. I believe the sanctions were on Russia, correct?
Yeah, I don't know about why would there be sanctions on Germany?
They weren't. I believe they were on Germany.
Why would we
they had put sanctions on Germany so they wouldn't have the completion of the pipeline into Germany, and so they were holding Germany hostage, saying you can't finish that, and because I don't think what are they going to do against Russia? I mean, Russia's just going to say we're going to go as far as we can go until somebody tells us we can't go any farther.
Right.
But I believe it was sanctions against Germany, saying if you complete this pipeline, then we're going to take these sanctions up against you. But we'll that's what Trump had put in place. and he dropped them. One of the first things he did there.
That's right.
He
allowed it to
same
go
as
on.
our pipeline. Same as our pipeline too.
By executive order. I think that's one of the things he did.
Right.
I see. I see what you're talking about. Yeah. Reuters. The U.S. Imposed further sanctions. Well, it's too much to get into right now, but I know.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
Just some moves that you scratch your head and you say, well,
Yep.
is this coincidence or does Russia see weakness right now in a president?
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that from left or right. I'm just saying,
well,
he did it once before.
I appreciate.
I suspect you are, but
Well, no, I appreciate him pitching it like that because it is a fact or a coincidence maybe that in the last 4 years before there wasn't anything. There was also, and this is a whole other branch on the tree, but the Chinese weren't talking about taking Taiwan when Trump was in office that I heard of, and now it's here. And again, is this coincidence or is the timing right that maybe America's got their hands full, and now's the time to at least test the waters with this stuff?
If you're after something, you creep as far as you can go till somebody slaps your hand and says no, and so I guess that's the theory. But anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there as kind of odd circumstances.
No, I appreciate it because I had notes to that effect, and I didn't want to get political, but is that coincidence or is that a fact? And that Biden has deals with the Ukraine and the Russians and the Chinese.
Yeah,
that can't be denied.
It'll also allow, if they take over Ukraine, it'll also allow access to the Black Sea.
Uh-huh.
So, that's another way of a port they could get from Western Europe.
Well, we don't think it's gonna. We don't think it's gonna happen. What do you think, Mike? We don't think Putin's gonna do that.
I don't know. I hope NATO has enough pushback. I'm hearing Germany's out, but I'm hoping there's 6 countries that surround Ukraine that are all NATO. So I'm hoping but albeit small. I don't know. I agree. I don't think it's going to happen only because I think he's just trying to flex his muscles, and he's trying to wait to see when Biden will say, "All right, that's enough." You know what I mean? He's just creeping, and I don't know, but
Sure.
we'll see. I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
One last point. From what I understand, the main reason he took those sanctions off Germany was because he thought that Trump telling places like Germany, NATO people like Germany, they had to pay their bill because they weren't paying their 2% of GDP.
That's true.
For protection.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of countries that didn't, and Trump went over there and said, hey, pay your bill. He was trying to make nice with Germany and say, all right, listen, I'm going to take these sanctions off you. But I don't know if he realized down the road what it would cause as far as Russia, the fuel situation, et cetera, et cetera. So just kind of interesting notes. That's all.
It's definitely interesting, and it's a interesting time to be alive and watch this stuff kind of real time. Afghanistan never turned me on. I don't want conflict as a form of entertainment by any means.
Yeah, me either. Unless something really happens, like an actual war breaks out. 'Cause if you remember when Trump started, they're all saying he's going to get us into a war for sure. That never happened. Not only did it not happen, he had Middle East countries signing peace agreements to try to broker peace agreements.
Mike, it's just going to be a small, what do you call it, incursion? I think it's what you call it.
Small incursion.
A small incursion.
Anyways, all right. Well, you got to wrap up. I just wanted to throw that in there. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for the call. By the way, I'll just throw this in. DJ Midas is in the chat room and says there were a ton of people pardoned by Trump connected to Russia. Coincidence? But anyway,
I don't know.
Do you want to get one more quick thing in? We got about 5 minutes.
Well, no, Mike had mentioned, and I did take some notes that and again, I don't want to bash on Biden or pump Trump or either way, but there was the time that I think they impeached him for a quid pro quo with Russia, but yet we have that on film with Biden and the Russians or the Ukrainians anyway. That you want $1 million or whatever it was, you have to fire the prosecutor, and so they fired the prosecutor who was investigating Hunter, and they got the $1 million, and that seemed to me to be the same thing if it was what Trump was doing or wasn't doing. But that also,
I think that's taken wildly out of context, by the way.
well, please tell me. I'm open to this. This is what I had heard through the media and whatever else.
No, there's tape of Mike Doyle likes to bring this up too. Yeah, there's tape of Biden openly speaking about how because the Ukrainian prosecutor was corrupt, and Biden said, as an emissary of the Obama administration, unless you get rid of this corrupt prosecutor, we're not going to give you any more help. And then, Fox News and everybody takes that and says, oh, see, this was out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But what was the accusation of him being corrupt, that he was taking money from somebody?
I don't remember the details, but then everybody on the right shoehorns Hunter Biden into it and says, oh, he was protecting his kid, when there's no evidence. I remember, at one point Fox News just completely dropped that whole narrative because there was no evidence to support that.
Right, they just kept playing the clip.
But it's a right wing talking point that, oh, this was all about Hunter Biden. There's no evidence it had anything to do with it.
Sure. Well, just like there was no evidence of any streetwalkers going tinkle on Donald Trump in a hotel room in Russia, as far as I know.
Agreed.
Yeah, they like, was that folks even, on my side of the aisle say, well, that was fabricated.
Yeah.
Like, well, I didn't see the tape of it and didn't see the pictures, so maybe it was. I can only think that it was fabricated. And to your point on, if this prosecutor was corrupt, if I don't know if that was true or not. I'll Fox News at the time was who I was listening to. 24/7, and they would say, you want to talk about a quid pro quo? He's saying like, hey, if you want the $1 million, fire the prosecutor,
right.
And that's what happened. And of course, we were all pulling our hair out on my side of the aisle that, well, that's quid pro quo, but there's zero backstory or zero periphery, information on that.
Yeah. Before we go, do you have any shows coming up as Grant Lampton that you want to plug?
I don't have anything booked coming up. I did enter into, I had a conversation with the folks from Shipyard Brewery up in Portland, Maine. With one of the folks who runs all of the breweries, and they've got breweries down in Florida. Most of them are up in Maine here. And I've got a line on that stuff, and I've got some fingers in the fire here, but nobody's pulled the trigger yet, but that'll happen. And I do want to do a shameless marketing plug. If I didn't last week, because we had kind of a truncated show. Who was on here last?
John Hopwood was with us.
Yeah.
And
so that ate up some time, but I played at the Shaskeen last Tuesday, and I wanted to say hello to Mike and Neil, two folks over there who got me in there, and I had a lovely time playing, and everything went over really well, and I hope to be back there soon. But,
excellent.
To get a date there. But those guys are really wonderful to me, and appreciate playing for them.
That was a long show, right?
Yeah. It was like 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. Yeah. Geez.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, we have a caller, but we really don't have time. We got to go. So
all right, man.
If you miss any part of today's show, it'll be up in just a little bit at WMNHradio.org and at my website, mattconnerton.com. Mike Sudderth. Dr. Mike, as my dad likes to call you. And I think Mike Pelopita calls you that now, too.
He does. And hello to you, Martin, if you're listening. It's good to hear from you, sir. I'm glad you're out of the asylum, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just glad we got his car keys.
Yeah, right?
Oh, my God. What a saga that was. All right. That's going to do it for us for now. I'll talk to y'all a little bit later. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.